I want to touch on the subject of reincarnation, and in particular I want to talk about it in the context of a higher essence and in the sense of good, or what we call benevolence. In the sense that when you look at humanity and you look at it in pure physicality, and if you were to buy into the belief, if you like, that it's one life, that it's human life is all it is, that we're a product of a lightning burst on a pool of mud that created a single cell bacteria which they've never been able to replicate, that happened billions of years ago, that led to an evolution of intelligence as we stand here today. And if you looked at life within that context, then it would be easy, or very easy, to look at benevolence and the highest good, if you like, charity in all its forms, and the will to make human life better in every way, shape or form, to get rid of evil as we know it, to get rid of vices, to get rid of drug use, to create a kind of utopia where everyone's living happy with their white picket fence and 3 kids and everybody's getting in on life. Then that's you can understand why we hold on to charity as being what we call our highest ideal. But if you talked about us being greater than that, if you talked about the fact that this is not our highest form of expression as a human being, if you talked about the fact that we come from a state of being or soulful state of being that is so much more, then that puts a whole different perspective on life. And it puts a whole different perspective on the way we look at illness and healing. It puts a whole different perspective on the way we look at what true good is and what true evil is. Because I've read in your books that you talk about evil simply being anything that separates us from our true essence. And if you really think about evil like that, it gives you a different context in the way that you look at life. For example, in our last interview, we talked about Mike Tyson, abusing his partners, and we all know that that's evil. But in that interview, we also talked about the fact that as a 6-year-old, he wasn't like that. There was a deeply sensitive child, and I would put it on anyone to point to the 1-year-old in the childhood centres that's going to be the mass murderer, because at that age, at that level of innocence, you can't pick that, which to me proves the fact that our essence is something much greater, much greater than what we actually live. It seems to me that there is so much more to life than just mere physicality, and that if we had a bigger picture of life was truly about, we would start to unpackage and question a lot of what I call the good ideals that we have about life.
The simplest way to understand reincarnation is to bring in 2 very powerful and defining words, and that is responsibility and love. And so we have to first and foremost understand that we are loved on a level that we have yet to understand. In fact, on a level that we don't care to understand. We are given many opportunities to incarnate, to make better choices. We are given many opportunities to incarnate and correct that which does not belong to what we are returning to, which is what our evolution is about. We are returning to somewhere where we left off. Our evolution is a journey of rediscovery, never a journey of discovery. It's never going to be anything new. We are returning to our essence. And so true evil is that which interferes with the process itself. In other words, if you don't have to name anyone. Any child who ends up being a mass murderer, an abuser, a rapist, or any of those definitions by which we know we can term that we don't want in our society, then we have to look at ourselves, not just the parents, not just a handful of people, but the entire world and society, and ask, how did we produce a way of life that denatured that person? And that's why I shifted the goalpost in terms of describing what evil is back to that which separates essence. Because in our essence, we're not capable of any wrong, we're not capable of any harm. In our essence is our truth. It's our divineness. It's our connection to God. So love is what reincarnation is about. It's about giving us opportunities to understand that we have the right to choose the true movement that we belong to, and that true movement is going to take us back to who we truly are. Secondly is the word responsibility. We're here to understand that we are living under the law of coexistence. In other words, that we don't just exist on this plane of life, but we exist universally. We too reflect a light back for the rest of the universe to look back at this little planet and say, oh, that's Earth. And so we need to understand that it's not just light, but a quality of light. Now, can you imagine if in the universe we were measured by the type of quality of light that we reflect back to it? We would certainly not do very well on our report card, given the atrocities and the miseries and the sufferings that occur on this planet, in addition to all the good that also is here. So our quotient in terms of our ability to reflect a quality of light is not exactly what we would want, simply because of the great disparity that we have in the quality of life that is being lived here on Earth. And so reincarnation is simply part of our evolution. It's an opportunity for us to return, experience, say yes, say no, and move on. And if we want to repeat something that is not going to advance us, then so be it. Let's repeat it until such time that we suffer so much that we learn from that suffering, and for some people that's the only way they learn, so that we can be confronted with that opportunity again and choose wisely the second time round, the third time round, or the 500th time round. It doesn't matter how long it takes. That's the beautiful love that we belong to. This love that actually says, eventually you're going to learn. You're free to choose, and that's the greatest gift that you can get. But freedom of choice is a responsibility. And so we need to learn that there is a certain way that I can choose to live that is going to be respectful of everybody, and therefore respectful and abiding of the law of coexistence.
So you're talking about reincarnation as effectively being a lesson in responsibility. Same with karma. Karma is a lesson in responsibility. Karma is a lesson that you do that, you don't just get away with it. You may have got away with it in that life, but the fact is you have to revisit and understand, because you didn't understand that life, or in that life the consequences of your actions, then you are basically being shown that life is eternal, that responsibility is eternal, that you can't just do something and think that the consequences end there. You can't drop the pebble in the pond and expect no ripples. There's ripples for a long, long time thereafter. And if we're talking the pond of the universe, those ripples continue out forever, as we know from science. So the fact is that, and if you come back to movement, how responsible then are we for our movements?
Every one of our movements, Adam, is a pebble, and we are responsible for the ripples that then go out to all the universe.
So as a religious teaching, this makes a lot of sense, because when you study religion as a whole, the concept of reincarnation never ever seems to be tied in with responsibility. I mean, if you look at the Christian view where it's one life, and especially the viewpoint where you can just say you're sorry at the end of your life and somehow, or confess your sins to a box, and somehow that alleviates you of your responsibility, or you take the Buddhist teaching that we come back in the next life as some other animal. None of those teachings seem to make sense to humanity as a whole. And something I've always appreciated with the way that you have presented religion is that the teachings make a lot of sense to the way life presents. Because all of us sit there in the quiet moments and we wondered, why is that child autistic? Why does that person get abused and not that person? And so something I've read in your books which makes a lot of sense to me, what if that is a rebalancing act? What if that is not a punishment as it's made out to be from a vengeful God, but an actual loving act in the sense that I know you're eternal. I also know what your essence is. I can also see that as a being you have chosen not to be in that essence. But I have to teach you that you need to be responsible for who you truly are. And when you are not who you truly are, You were being shown what you were capable of. And through the act of reincarnation and through the act of karma, I am showing you that there's consequences for you separating from that which you truly are. And so when you say that and I know it sounds very controversial, when you say that if you've been raped in this life, then that is in many cases a rebalancing act for what you've done in a past life. That sounds very harsh, but only if you took it in the context of one life. If you really sat back and thought about life being eternal, if you thought about reincarnation being life after life, then that one singular life where you're given what seems a very harsh lesson over a million lives actually makes a lot more sense. Because, as we know from children, when you teach them consequence, they learn very, very quickly. And there's no greater lesson in life than the harsh lessons you receive of when you actually get to experience the consequences of what you've done to another. If you've been bullied, you should never, ever, ever bully again. Yet this brings me to something quite interesting in that we seem to be very, very stubborn. Because I know myself and you look out in humanity and you think we don't get our lessons. We just don't seem to get it. You grow up being bullied, you'd think that should mean that you would never bully again. Yet you become a bully again. And one of the things that's always intrigued me, for example, even if you look at pedophilia, a lot of pedophiles were actually abused as a child. Why wouldn't, when they grow up, they go, I will never let that happen to someone else again? Which seems to suggest that there's something greater going on in the picture of reincarnation than just a fact of me learning to correct my behaviours.
Yeah, let me make a very clear point here. God doesn't provide the corrections and the teachings. The corrections are attracted by us. It's our own evolution within us that attracts the corrections so that we can experience what it's like to do that to another. We already know what it's like to do that to another before we do it. And sometimes we exercise the desire of free will to do it anyway. So essentially we override our essence in order to do what we do onto others that is, not part of the law of coexistence. And we're exercising free will, but we're actually exercising free will over the free will of our essence that would otherwise not choose that. And we need to understand here that we bring in the science of spirit and soul and the difference between the two. Because without that distinction, it doesn't make sense. And that's why I've packaged it in a way that actually covers the everything that you've mentioned in another interview, how when it's all put together, it actually makes sense. So it's not that you simply get raped because you have been a rapist in a past life. The way it works is much, much more loving than that. So let's say, for example, you did rape or committed murder or something. If you are truly understanding of your actions, if you are truly understanding of the wider impact of what you have done, in the sense that it's not just the act, but the fact that you've left someone scarred for life, the fact that you may have interfered with a marriage, the fact that you have interfered with someone's family and friends and colleagues, and denatured essentially an aspect of society and of another human being, and you truly feel into that, then you don't have to come back and feel and experience rape. But if you shut yourself down, if you bury your action, if you bury your choice, if you disregard the fact that, or ignore the fact that you had a responsibility and you did have a choice, and basically just say that was my right, I experienced it, that's what I wanted to do, then you attract a correction so that you can understand not so much what being raped is, but the actual scarring and the lifelong effect that has on you. It's not just the act, that we focus on the act itself, but a lot of people that have been affected by rape probably never feel great in their bodies again. They probably never trust. They don't like to be naked. They're awkward around lovemaking or having sex. They don't make great partners. There's an element of mistrust. They don't open up. It's a lifelong scarring that you have to take into consideration when we're studying the act we call rape, let's say. Or in the case of murder, you just don't murder someone. You are destroying a family. You're destroying that person's sister, brother, friend, partner, mum, dad, daughter, son, whatever it may be, colleagues, friends, everyone that person knows is scarred or affected by that act. And that, when that is not considered, that's when you start to attract the corrections that are going to bring about not a lesson by retribution, but a lesson in terms of understanding the broadness of life and the fact of the law of coexistence. So reincarnation and karma is not a light subject. It's a beautiful science. And to say that we are just one life and you can have your sins forgiven is irresponsible. And also that you come back and come back into an animal. I'm not sure, not familiar with the Buddhist reincarnation teachings. Look, we simply just keep coming back until we get it right. And it's based on love and responsibility, and it's a universal form of love, and it's a universal form of responsibility. And I've yet to write the book, but I will continue teaching it in its many ways until humanity understands that it's a broad-based, universal form of love and responsibility.